Do-it-yourself Bry here, and today we are going to put a radio, doubled-in radio in this 2500 Ram heavy-duty diesel truck. I'm going to show you guys some tips in putting this in, and also show you the tools that's necessary to complete the job. Alright, so the first thing I want to talk to you guys about is the material. You're also going to need a wiring harness. Now there's two wiring harnesses available, or two ways of doing this anyway. They have what's called an interface. An interface allows you to retain a lot of the factory things that might be inside the radio, such as factory chimes, certain things that is programmed into the factory radio that when you remove it, the car's electrical system might lose some of that information. This is what I found to be especially important on General Motors vehicles versus Dodge. But also the interfaces will allow you to keep your factory steering wheel controls, like your volume and things that you operate from the steering wheel. In this particular case, we're going to try to save some money. This is a do-it-yourself tip. Rather than putting in an interface, we're going to take a standard Chrysler wiring harness, and we're going to wire that in and run a switched power and not use the interface. The interface for this vehicle, I want to say they're right around $100 versus this is about a $10 or $11 part. We're also going to use this dash kit that we're going to have to modify, because this dash kit is only designed for a normal size radio, a single-din radio. This particular truck, they do not make a double-din kit for it. Unless you have the radio that has the navigation radio from the factory, the style radio that has these two little circle halves that come out here, they don't make a double-din kit. They do make a double-din kit for the larger radios on the navigation style. Now what some people are doing to get past this is they're modifying this dash kit, which, by the way, I haven't done this before on this vehicle, so this is going to be a first for me. People are taking these and they'll actually Bondo or put in pieces of plastic and plastic weld this in there, and then repaint basically the finish with a piece of plastic in place of this half. So you can put a doubled-in radio in there. It gives a real clean factory look. That's a lot of work. It's not something that we're going to do on this particular install. We're going to modify this kit due to cost reasons. Just another thing to point out, you can buy pieces that are already done like this. There's a couple guys out there on the internet, you might find them on YouTube, that are actually modifying this this piece here and selling it. Looks great. It's a phenomenal way of doing it, but it does cost a little bit more. I think these guys are charging $150, $200, maybe even more for that dash piece. In this particular case, this is a $15 part that we're going to modify, so we're going to try to avoid some costs on this install. To remove this dash, we just have to move this whole piece here. And rather than starting at the top and prying here, I recommend just taking and prying underneath here until you find the fasteners. And once you get it out a little bit with your screwdriver, you can just take your hand and kind of find the little areas and pull the dash back. Some of these can be a little bit stiff. Just going to have to carefully feel around until you find the areas that are clipped into the dash, and apply a little force to pull those out. Essentially, once you get it out, you're going to want to unplug all the little wiring harnesses that go to the different things here. You can typically do most of them with just squeezing your finger on some of the tabs, but Some of them you may need to get a small pick or a small screwdriver and pry the tab back so you can pull it out of the way. Specifically these power outlet plugs, I'm going to need to use a screwdriver to get the plugs out on those ones. Alright, so once you get them all unplugged, basically you can pull it out of the way. You can see that here is where all the little clips are. These little things push into those holes right there. So when you're pulling this thing out, pay attention to where those are at. Kind of feel for them and then pull in those areas directly on those so you don't damage the dash piece by breaking it, prying in the wrong spot. Then you can just take your Phillips screwdriver, unscrew the 4 screws, one thing that I failed to mention to you about the things that you're going to need, you're going to need an antenna adapter. This antenna adapter allows you to take the Chrysler antenna to a standard Motorola that's going to be on all the aftermarket radios. Alright, so the radio that we're going to install today is the Kenwood DDX371. This is a really cool radio because it has, it's Cirrus ready, has the Bluetooth, works with Pandora, does the iPod, iPhone, has RCA outputs. It also has an input for a backup camera, which we are going to install the backup camera on this particular install. Now with this, you've got your microphone. Typically I recommend putting the microphone right here. That way your passenger is close to the microphone, you're close to the microphone. Both of you can talk on a phone call. So what we'll do is we'll take and we'll put that microphone up there. We'll run the wire down the pillar there. This wire here is a green wire that you're supposed to tap onto the parking brake so that the DVD player will only play if you have your parking brake applied. So essentially what you do here is you take your radio wiring harness and your car wiring harness and you connect all the wires together. Make sure that you cap off any unused wire. It's very important that you cap off any unused wire because it may touch something in the dash and short out. There's different wire strippers available. I use these automatic strippers and I prefer to use a really good crimp tool. Having a nice crimp tool and a good set of strippers on hand makes this job a lot easier, and you're going to make a better connection. You have less likelihood of your connections falling apart. I prefer to trim all the wires roughly the same length, like this. Okay, so you want to take your white caps here and your electrical tape. I take my grounds, my powers, my switched power, twist them together, make a crimp, double check, make sure your wires are nice and tight. They're not going to come out of there. Alright, so the reason why I have this test light is we need to find a switched power. Being this doesn't have a switched power up here, we've got to locate it somewhere else. You don't want to just tap onto any wire. You could tap onto a wire that might have power on it that turns on and off the ignition, but you might damage the car's electrical system. It's important that you find a good safe wire to tap onto. I recommend finding your ignition source directly at the ignition itself on a big heavy 10 gauge wire, or in this particular case it's made my job a little bit easier. So on this side, this cigarette lighter or power outlet, whatever you want to call it here, this one here turns on and off with the accessory or the ignition. It's not constant. So essentially we can use the switched power, so our radio is going to go off and on. We're going to tap on to the back of this. The nice thing about this is we know exactly what this is, to where we're not tapping onto some computer controlled part that might damage it, like the heating and control right here or the 4-wheel drive switch. that's not a good thing to tap onto because you could possibly overload the system. The factory designed these to basically for people to plug things into them. In this particular truck, this is a switched power one. And how I'm going to verify that is with my test light. I'm going to take and I'm going to find the plug that plugs into the back of this one has essentially two wires. It has one that is a ground for the outlet, and then it has one that's a switch power that powers it up. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our test light and we're going to stick it on the side that we think may have the switch power, which in this case, it is the pink and yellow stripe wire. Put your key in the ignition, turn it on. You can see that the light lit up there. This is going to be a good switched power to power up our radio. We're also going to be installing a backup camera, and we're going to install a video system in this truck as well. You can check out the videos on those. Crimp our connection, and then essentially we take this little thing here, and this is going to tap around the wire that we need. So you take this T-tap, and we're going to tap the pink with yellow stripe wire, which is our switched. Take your pliers, fish it down to our connection, and plug it into the T-tap. Alright, so there's our reverse light there. In order for our backup camera to work, we've got to tap onto those reverse lights. So we don't have to run a wire all the way to the reverse light, I'm going to show you where you can tap onto the wire underneath the dash. So I have already predetermined that the reverse wire is a white wire with a very light green stripe. I'm going to show you how to find that. The easiest place to tap onto this wire is actually right behind the dash area behind here. You can see this blue wire I've got hanging down here. That's actually my wire that I've already pre-tapped to the reverse wire. So I'm just going to show you underneath there. Now keep in mind, it's always handy to have your handy dandy flashlight. The do-it-yourself Bri always has, and your razor knife to cut tape, and get underneath the dash, and I'll show you under here. Alright, so you see that wiring harness right there that goes into that module right there. Now I had to take my razor knife that every do-it-yourselfer should have in his pocket and cut back the tape, and you can see I've located that wire right there. That wire is white with a light green stripe on it. You can see I've taken a T-tap and tapped onto that wire. This is going to allow the electricity from the reverse lights when you're in reverse to go up to your backup screen and make your backup camera screen turn on. So to verify that you have got the white right reverse wire and you're not tapping onto something else, it's crucial that you verify what you're tapped onto. Essentially what we're going to do is we're going to take our test light here, and we are going to touch the two together like this. Now you can see I've got the two touched together. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn the ignition on, put my foot on the brake, and then I'm going to take the gear selector and put it into reverse. Now that it's in reverse, you can see that that test light lit up. Put it back into park, and it goes out. Alright, so the next connection you're going to need to make, if you're installing this radio with a DVD player in it, this is going to hook up to your parking brake assembly. So when your parking brake is applied, it'll allow the DVD system to come on. Essentially what we're going to do is T-tap that wire as well. You can see up behind that little module up there, you can see my red T-tap that I'm shining the light right on. That black connector is what plugs into the parking brake. assembly. Essentially what that does is it sends ground to your DVD player, allowing it to turn on. Alright, so this radio has Bluetooth hands-free calling. With this radio you need to install a microphone. What we're going to do is we're going to take this microphone and we're just essentially going to clip it on the headliner right about center, and then you just take the wire and you shove it up behind the headliner, and then you push the wire over and then down this pillar, tape it to this existing wiring harness, run the wire over, and then you take and plug this into your radio. Alright, so with this radio install, we're going to be installing a backup camera. Alright, so in addition to the regular radio, we're going to add Sirius XM radio, satellite radio, for our radio that's going to go in this Dodge pickup here. And I'll show you how that's done. Okay, so essentially what we're going to do here is take this single DIN radio dash kit and cut and modify it to fit our double DIN radio. Alright, so we're getting ready to fit this radio in here. This double DIN radio is quite a bit larger than the factory radio that's coming out of here. We're going to have to do some modifications. You can see this pocket here. What I'm going to do, because it's not fitting correctly, is I'm going to trim the top of these brackets off so I can get the radio to fit in there correctly. Then in order to mount it, we're going to have to build some brackets that will screw to the side of the radio there, and then we'll essentially put an L bracket out and secure it to the front of there. We're also going to have to do some trimming to the dash in order to get this double DIN radio to fit here. Just wanted to show you a comparison of the height difference. The factory radio fits in there real tight, and you can see the aftermarket radio is going to be taller and it's got a bigger faceplate, so there's going to be some trimming to the dash in order to get this to fit. Alright, so this is a bit of a delicate process here. What you have is not enough height between here and here. We've got definitely enough width between here and here to get the radio to fit through, but the top and the bottom essentially is where the problem is. So what we've got to do is take this Dremel tool with a drill bit in it and just kind of take our time and delicately remove this right here and cut this opening just a little bit bigger. You're going to want to take your time on this so you don't mess it up, cut it too big, or make it real jagged and ugly. This is something you're just going to want to be real careful with. Alright, so I've got it cut to where the radio's fitting in there. Now I've taken a metal file and filed along this edge to give it a smoother look. You can see on the top edge I haven't filed it yet, so I've got to go through and file some of the roughness from my cut. So essentially what I did is I cut a little bit off the top and I cut more off the bottom. The reason why I cut more off the bottom is there's a metal bracket up behind the dash when this is in there that's going to make it hard for the radio to go higher than it is lower. So essentially I'd rather the radio was lower, and that's why I cut further down and then filed that off. So what you want to do, once you've got it cut big enough to fit the radio through, essentially you just grab a metal file and just kind of take your time and be careful not to scratch the paint So you're just going to have to kind of go at this for a little while. So essentially our radio's just got to fit through the back side. Like that there. And then we're going to use those side pieces that come with our other dash kit so we can fill in those little half rounds there. Alright, so now I've got the pocket out of there. These risers were to secure the old factory radio, but they're up too high. We got to cut those off. Probably going to put these babies on the bench grinder. It's not too important to make it pretty because it's just hidden behind the dash, nobody sees. Alright, so another area we're going to need to trim on this pocket is this right here. The radio is sitting up just a little bit too high, and that little riser there essentially is making it to where the radio isn't going to fit correctly. So I'm going to trim that down a little bit. Alright, so you can see these things here I've trimmed to go on the side of the radio. Essentially I just took the dash kit and cut them. We're going to screw those babies in there into the dash and then put the radio in there as well. Okay, so basically what we've got here is a bracket that we're making for the side of the radio. We're going to have two brackets there. You can see my little metal brackets back there. They go on the side of the radio and screw in, and then they mount to the dash right there. And then our modified dash kit there just essentially screws in just like it normally would. You've got both sides there. And the radio's actually really secure in there. It's a pretty tight fit. And then when you put the brackets on there, it's really solid. Alright, so there's the finished product. We've got the double-din DVD player installed. We're going to finish hooking up the backup camera and the video system. So you have to check out those other videos there. But it's got a good, clean, nice look in there. One thing I wanted to show you is we put this USB port here so we can plug in the iPods.